I use Paula's Choice.
What's Paula's Choice?
Oh, it's just facial stuff.
Is it? Is it good?
It's great.
Paula's Choice?
Yeah.
So where do you buy that?
Online.
And
It's
what
just
makes it
face
great?
stuff. Well, it's cruelty free.
Okay.
You use animal products, and it's all organic ingredients. And I don't know if you ever go to the Thai restaurant Hope.
No.
But the owner, Maud, she has baby butt facial skin, and she's just like glowing. I keep asking her, are you pregnant? Are you pregnant? She says, no, I use Paula's Choice. And so I went online that night, and I was like, oh my God. You know, like aging serums and whatever. I'm all into that. I'll spend hours just like... that's my like escape.
But Asian women have beautiful skin anyway. Like, I mean, I have Irish skin. Let's just face it. I'm the crypt keeper by like 55 years old. I'm going to look like the crypt keeper.
No.
It's so true. We can't keep moisture.
Is it more sensitive from sensitivity from sun? Perhaps?
Part of it.
Yeah.
Age is from sun. Why? Do I have freckles?
I've got freckles.
I got so many freckles.
But yeah, I think Asian people are really into skincare.
That
like
may be true.
Koreans are, have you seen those bank robbery masks that Chinese people wear to the beach? They look like they're about to rob a bank. It's to protect their skin from the sun and not get color. Go online.
Sandy was talking to me about this actually, because Sandy said her mother didn't want her to get color because if you got color, it meant you like worked in the field. Or something like that.
Yeah, like everybody in China looks like a Pussy Riot member, on the beach,
right?
Just lying out. It's interesting.
How crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely don't think about that in the South. Like definitely not when I grew up in the 70s. Mm-hmm. I never wore sunscreen, and I think I'm paying for it now.
Yeah.
But Paula's Choice, is that what it's called?
Yeah. It's a good brand.
Not related to Paula Deen, I hope.
No.
I'm joking.
Also that Whole Foods brand, Borland, I think, is really good.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'm not sponsored. Just
I'm not sponsored either.
But you can sponsor me. No.
I know, right?
I'll take some free items.
How is the tattoo stuff coming?
Oh, it's awesome. It's a lot of fun.
You may want to pull your mic a little closer.
Am I being recorded?
Yeah.
Oh,
we started.
Oh, okay. I love it. I love working in different mediums. Ink, on skin. I haven't been tattooing on skin. It's all practice pads, but it's exciting.
Yeah, it's a new career for you, right?
Yes, I'm taking an apprenticeship, learning how to do traditional tattoo art. That's what you start with because that's the basis of creating a good tattoo, long-lasting tattoo. Mm-hmm. So learning, empty space. So you don't want to create a tattoo that's going to be mushy later. So you learn the ideals of creating a good tattoo. And so right now I'm at the point where I'm learning skin depth, so I can be a good tattoo artist and do well.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I painted all my life. Well, always knew that I wanted to do something artistic. I paint. My mother always told me not to do art. I think the generation that she's from, a lot of people didn't think there was money in art. Mm-hmm. And they always discouraged their children from it. But here I am now going, screw that. I'm gonna do what I want to do.
Especially in LA, everybody makes their money on art. Just about everybody's in some artistic field. Even people don't think of editing as an artistic field, but it is.
Oh, it
and there's so many
yes.
kind of routine mechanical fields in this city that are very creative, highly creative. I think most successful people are highly creative people, even if they're business or accountants or whatever. Mm-hmm. So tell me about your mom. She's Japanese?
She is Japanese, but I found out later in life, much later, that she is actually part Korean.
Really?
I have a Korean grandmother. Mm-hmm. That was kept a secret.
Why was she a secret?
I think the Koreans and the Japanese didn't have a good relationship many years ago. And I think, it's still a mystery. She won't answer questions. It's been always very hidden from my sister and I. My mother, it's possible that my grandmother was brought to Japan as a comfort woman by the Japanese.
I think I know, but I'm not sure the people listening know.
Comfort women were basically women that were taken to comfort men. Taken, meaning, or sold. I don't really know.
Like human trafficking, sort of.
Basically.
Yeah.
And it's possible. I don't have proof. I don't have, my grandmother's passed on now, so I don't have any way to ask her. But the fact that I'm part Korean wasn't known until after I had been living in Japan many years, thinking that I was full Japanese or half Japanese.
Right.
Basically, my mother's Japanese. It's so confusing to me to find out later that you're a whole nother race as well.
Right.
And my father is English, Irish, German.
Okay.
So they met in Japan when my father was in the Navy.
Okay.
And he was my mother's second marriage, because she was married from a fixed marriage, arranged marriage,
right,
and had a son, wanted to leave him, and basically my father was like a ticket to America, as many, I think, international marriages are.
Right, I think so too.
So, and when my mother and father came to America, I think all of the history of being part Korean was just shoved away, or maybe it was already shoved away. I don't know. But
interesting.
She made really good kimchi. And,
she did?
And I heard her speak Korean here and there at the market, and it was always weird to me. Like her cooking was always Japanese, but kimchi infused, like very spicy, and that's not typical for a Japanese cuisine.
But it is for Korean, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A lot of spice.
Yes.
A lot of flavor.
So
that would be, how interesting. How funny that you look in hindsight and you go, hey, that kind of makes sense now, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. It was, I had to find out on my own that, just because I was the younger child, and everyone wanted to protect me in a way, like about life, and didn't tell me anything. So I would hear, things like when my mom was drunk, I would hear her talk to people, or I would hear my, just neighbors talking, and you start listening, you start going, wow, there's more to life than what I'm really being exposed to.
Right. You start putting two and two together. Kids are so smart.
Yep.
They really know more than we think they do,
yep.
I think.
I didn't know I had a brother.
When did you find that out?
Much later. I think my neighbors had mentioned something to me when I was in elementary school. And then as an adult, I basically was pregnant with my first daughter. I didn't know I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. And I was in a restaurant working as a waitress, and this woman came in and said, I'm a medium. I have something to tell you. And I said, what? She said, can you get me a candle? So I brought a candle. She said, your brother needs to tell you something. Well, he basically committed suicide at 15.
He did?
Yes. And that's an interesting story. Anyway, I said, well, I've heard about him, but nobody knows about him. So that's why I know she was real, because nobody knew about him.
Right.
I never even, and so I started discovering him later, but she told me, he wants you to continue your art. He regrets what he did. He's telling me to do this, telling me to tell you to do this, like wear brighter colors, live, enjoy your life. And I said, wow, okay. So she gave me a message, and 2 weeks later I ended up going to Japan, and I confronted my mother.
Wow.
And I said,
well, where were you when this happened?
I was here in LA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and,
but had you ever met your brother?
No. Well, I don't know.
So you weren't sure that he existed. You had rumors and rumblings, and then this medium comes in and goes, "Your brother has a message for you," and you're like, "Holy cow! Hold on."
Yeah.
And then you go to your mom to confront her.
Yeah.
And what happened?
She broke down in tears and cried and didn't tell me anything, and so I ended up finding out everything about him from my aunt. She told me the whole story. And as a child I grew up in Cerritos.
Okay.
And as a child growing up in Cerritos, when I was a baby, my father encouraged my mother to take my sister, go to Japan, bring Shodi back, which is my brother's name, bring him to America. And so she did. She left and to go on this mission to bring him back. And this is all, I know this through my aunt. She told me this story. And what was supposed to be just a very quick trip ended up to be about 8 months.
Wow.
She didn't.
What did you do in those 8 months?
She got distracted.
By what? 8 months is a long distraction.
Well, during that time, somebody, my sister's about 2.5 or maybe 5. I don't really know. The time frame's kind of a blur. But she went to go get him. My aunt said that she basically chickened out. And
so chickened out and bringing him back, or chickened out and actually
didn't want to do it.
Over?
She said that my mom said he was ugly.
Ugly?
Oh. And she spent a lot of time. Well, basically, someone told my mom, "Oh, you should take Anzu, my sister, to this audition. They're looking for a star in Japan, and it's a big audition. Take her." And so my mother said, "Okay, I'll take her." So she took her to this audition. My sister basically didn't speak Japanese, didn't know much except for maybe one song, Japanese song called Ame Ame Fure Fure, and it's a rain song. It's like a folk song. And she made my sister go, and my sister sang the song Ame Ame Fure Fure Kasa. It's really cute. She had bell bottoms, whatever, and she got chosen.
Wow.
And they were going to make she had this whole future set out for her. And my mother, I think that was the spark of, wow, like she's got something.
Right.
And then just all her focus went on to, like I don't have to go back to America. I have my money ticket. My future is here. And she had to come back to America because of me.
Right.
And to this day, my sister thanks God that thanks life that she did come back to get me and to come back to America, although my mom regrets it. So she didn't bring Shodi back. She saw no future with having him in America.
Right.
And broke my brother's heart, I'm sure. This is how I translate this whole situation.
Right.
I don't really know because I'm not any of these people in this situation, but he was a very sensitive person, according to this medium, very sensitive, and killed himself.
Aww.
And they found him with a locket with the photo of my sister and I in his locket.
Oh no.
I know.
Bless his heart.
And
that breaks my heart.
And so,
because she left him. She wouldn't accept him. Sounds like. And that's hard when your mother doesn't accept you. It's really hard.
Yeah. But she came back with this newfound knowledge that my sister has talent. There's something to be,
star potential.
And I think in the back of my mother's mind, she always knew that she wanted to go back to Japan and still give that to my sister or relive that moment of possible fame, because that person who they ended up choosing later became a huge star, like Oscar level, Japan Oscar level celebrity, but very respected level. And so
like Kelly Clarkson of American Idol, like that.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like that kind of level. So what was happening to you when your mother was doing all this with Anzu?
I was left when my father was LAPD. He left me with his partner's wife. So I was sort of being raised by them during that time. And
how'd that make you feel?
I don't remember. I was too little to understand and
How were you?
comprehend. I was probably, if my sister was 5, I was probably 2.5, because we were about 2.5 years apart.
Okay, so you were really little.
I was very little. My sister came back. All she spoke was Japanese. I spoke English. We played together, but we,
How crazy.
didn't really. We spoke in 2 different languages playing together, and
So she learned Japanese really fast. Well, in the 8 months that she was there.
yeah. Well, when you're a sponge.
Yeah, at that age.
And then growing up, my mother kept getting my sister into modeling, getting photos, and I mean, I feel like we've spoke about this before regarding our mothers and staged mamas and all that. But yes.
But what was she doing with you while she was doing that with Ansu?
Well, I was kind of like what they call in Japanese, the shadow of my sister. I just followed her around. I don't think my mother found use in me. I always cried in the bathroom.
Aww.
Like I always hid. I don't know. I'm saying I cried because at a very young age, I think about the same time when my mother came back, my parents split.
Okay.
And
so you were about 2.5 when they split.
Yeah, they split. Maybe I was 3, and all she did was shit talk about him.
Yeah, that's hard, isn't it?
And so growing up hearing that, I didn't want to have an opinion. I reclused. I didn't want to show love. I was afraid of fear. I guess even in the book, the book that
we're
you want to talk about says it perfectly. Fear of affection, because it's not really well received, or there's not a lot of good energy around that growing up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of, I learned way later in life that I really tucked my talents away.
You hide them, don't you?
Really deep. Whether it was fear of being used, fear of being made fun of, all the fears.
Fear of being seen.
Fear of being seen.
Fear of letting them see a glimpse of who you actually are. Because if you do that and it doesn't line up with who they think you should be, it's annihilated.
Exactly.
So the reason that I wanted you to come on the podcast is because we had a conversation about our moms, and then I said, you should read this book. The book is called Trapped in the Mirror by Ilan Golam. I hope I said her name right. And she is a therapist who wrote a book about being raised by a narcissistic parent. And I, after years of therapy, have self-diagnosed my mother as being this exact parent. When I read this book, it was like someone had been following my life and taking notes and put it in a book. That's the way I felt after I read this book. I was so blown away because I thought, I can't believe you've captured a picture of my mother in the characteristics and the way she functions. Obviously, they didn't follow me around and write down my life story, but I did feel like they had really captured the essence of what I grew up in and how it affected me. And then I recommend this book to you, and the next time I saw you, you read it and you were like, wow.
Mind blown.
Exactly. Mind blown, right?
Yes.
So in order for people, I'm glad that you shared some of your story first, because now when I read this, you can, I'm just going to read a few excerpts from the book.
Sure.
And then people can go, oh, I see what you're talking about. So I'm really glad you did that first, because I have similar stories to yours. My mom left me too when I was 4. She was supposed to be gone for 2 weeks, and she pretty much came back like 6-8 months later, and she also was very obsessed with me being a star, and I had no interest. She had me start modeling at age 4. I was the biggest tomboy on the planet. I had no interest at all. And when I was about 8 or 9, she wanted me to be in this movie called Little Darlings. Everybody knows that I'm 47, so Little Darlings was a long, long, long time ago. And I got cast in this part, and I was like, no way. It shoots in the summer. I spend my summers with my dad. I'm not going to not go fishing and forget it. She didn't talk to me the whole summer because I would not go and do this movie. So she would make me audition for stuff, and I figured out if I was just a jerk in the audition, I wouldn't get the part, and it would embarrass her. So she eventually stopped taking me because I was just like, I keep saying I don't want to do this. You're making me do this. And I don't know how else to control this situation. I was the same way. I showed my mother no emotion ever. Not kindness, not warmth, not care, not concern, not anger, not fear, not frustration. Because if I gave her any window into any feeling, it was a vulnerability she could attack.
Yes.
Is that how you felt?
Yes. Very, very similar, very familiar with that.
Yes.
Of
scenario. Hiding, staying quiet, staying small, playing small so that you're not seen, so that you're not open for attack. You know, the only time I ever got any praise was if I got an award. Like I wrote a short story in middle school that my teacher submitted that I won like a state award for. That woman talked about that damn award until I was probably 30. That's all she talked about. And I was like, but there are these, you know, I have 2 kids. There's so many things to talk about other than one award, you know, that you got for being unlike your mom, or maybe like your mom. My mom thought creativity was paramount. Why in the world? She said to me once, if you become a stay-at-home mom, I will disown you. And I'm a stay-at-home mom. She's already disowned me before that even happened. But I thought, but isn't that kind of okay? I mean, what if that's what I want to do? And why is that so bad? But if you weren't achieving, you didn't exist. That I don't know if yes,
very familiar, and I basically became non-existent because I wasn't achieving.
Right.
And with my sister, she was getting a lot of praise. There was a photographer that would take pictures and put them in a photography bank in Japan and would become what covers of, you know, magazines. They would buy the picture, you know,
like Getty Images.
Exactly. Yeah. And so my mother would make money in that sense through the photographer, and so it was achieving, it was getting her attention, making friends, showing like her daughter is, you know, is talented, and because my sister did music as well, she made us play piano, although I hid under the piano all the time, played Legos while my sister would continue on. But with my sister, it was opposite how she took it. Right. She felt that performing and being of service was the only safe place. So my safe place was hiding, and my sister's safe place was being visible.
Right.
If she didn't perform, she would get knocked down, or it was so opposite for both of us.
Right. She kind of tried to comply with what the narcissist viewed as worthy of love. Right?
Exactly.
And you said, no, this is not what I'm going to be or who I am. Is that right?
I think it was just a protector, to be safe, because anytime whatever I said, even if it was
innocuous,
even if I said nothing, I still got criticized.
Same here.
So, for instance, when I was younger, there was a plane crash growing up Cerritos, right down the street from us. I was at a visitation with my father. I was at, I don't know, JCPenney or Sears or whatever, on the TV area of the store. I saw the plane crash happening, and I saw my neighbors out there, and it was devastating.
Yeah.
But I was so afraid to call that I didn't, even though I knew this was the most tragic thing that's ever happening to my family. I didn't call. I do regret it, because when I did go home after 2 days, I got so chewed out for not calling, not because my mother wanted to share like what's happened to our neighbors,
right?
But you didn't care about me. I could have been dead. You didn't. And I'm just this child.
Right.
But it was, I did wrong. And she kept bringing it up to, when people were around us asking about this plane crash, it wasn't about, my friend who died in the crash. It was what I didn't do to make her feel. So I still got chewed out for not doing anything.
Yeah, because she wasn't your focus. You should have been more concerned about taking care of her than anything else, and you didn't. So now you are rejected fully and publicly. Like the public shaming of bringing it up to people that come into your house is a public shaming. I know my mother used shame all the time in that exact manner. Well, if Leanne would have just called me,
yes,
then I would have been fine. And you're like, why am I the asshole every time? I remember at a certain age going, I can't possibly be an asshole every time. I mean, not every single time. If I'm an asshole every time, then why am I here? Which is what they want you to think, right? After I've read this book, she articulated it so beautifully to say, you shouldn't exist. The point is that you have no right to exist. So what fascinates me about people like you and me is that you go, no, actually I do. But there's a part in your brain that goes, but do I? Or at least for me sometimes, where I go, but do I? Because that mom relationship is so strong, whether you like it or not. She created you. You came from her. You wouldn't be here without her. And I think there's that little parent in your brain that goes, I told you weren't good enough to be here. I told you weren't good enough to have your own podcast or be a tattoo artist. You'll never make it.
Yeah,
Do you
there
have
was
that?
actually a term the author uses that I just re-listened to this morning in chapter 19 at 44 seconds.
Oh,
I looked down at the second.
Let me look
There's
at
a
chapter
term
19.
that she uses, and I was like, yes, I live that. And it takes a lifetime to recognize.
it takes a lifetime to right the boat, doesn't it?
It does, because you can't really heal from it when it's happening all the time in your life of is it devaluing or
It is devaluing.
yourself. Yeah,
Or let me read a little bit from here.
Please.
Narcissists are wholly different people. They unconsciously deny an unstated and intolerably poor self-image through inflation. So they have a poor self-image, but they inflate themselves to the point where they are narcissistic. They turn themselves into glittering figures of immense grandeur surrounded by psychologically impenetrable walls. The goal of this self-deception is to be impervious to greatly feared external criticism and to their own roiling sea of doubts. This figure of paradox needs to be regarded as perfect by all. To achieve this, he or she constructs an elaborate persona. The persona needs an appreciative audience to applaud it. If enough people do so, the narcissist is relieved that no one can see through his disguise. The persona is a defensive schema to hide behind, like the false front of a store on a Western movie set. When you peer behind the propped-up wall, you find nothing. Similarly, behind the grandiose parading, the narcissist feels empty and devoid of value. Because his life is organized to deny negative feelings about himself and to maintain an illusion of superiority, the narcissist family is forcibly conscripted into supporting roles. They have no other option if they wish to get along with him. His mate must be admiring and submissive to keep the marriage going, and his children will automatically mold themselves into any image that is projected upon him. Here the tragedy begins. A narcissist cannot see his children as they are, but only as his unconscious need to dictate. He does not question why his children are incredibly wonderful, better than anyone else's, or intolerably horrible, the worst in all respects, or why his view of them ricochets from one extreme to another with no middle ground. It is what they are. I mean, I feel like that's exactly the way my mom was.
So you're an only child?
I'm an only child, yeah.
See, it's fascinating to me that this strong and was capable of staying afloat, because I had my sister, and I honestly do not know what I would have done without having that support of going through the battlefields of life with a parent who has the narcissistic tendencies or narcissism and surviving. I mean,
it's really hard. And, you know, when you say to people, I feel foolish sometimes because I don't feel like anyone really understands the depth of the psychological warfare that happens when you have a narcissistic parent. You may not necessarily be beaten or, you know, sexually assaulted or any kind of massive trauma like that from a narcissistic parent. However, it's such a mind fuck, this raising, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard. And, you know, to speak to what you said, thank you for your compliment. But I constantly say, I am just like my mom, but not broken. If I had had a sibling and they'd been like my dad, they'd be dead. They would never have made it through this woman. They would never have survived her. And so I connected to animals. I had a cat from the time I was 5. Now, my mom left when I was about 4.5. And at 5, I got a cat that stayed with me. He lived until I had him 18 years. And he was my sibling. So he was my soulmate. He was who I cried to at night. I didn't talk to him, but I would cry and hold him. He never left me, and he was my cat. My dad didn't like my dad. He didn't like my mom. He was my cat. So he was the one the one living thing that I was safe with. So I did have that safe place, and I did have my dad, and my dad's family is a really loving, inclusive family. No one in that whole family ever talked trash about my mother, ever. Now, she talked a lot of shit about my whole dad's family.
I believe it.
Every person. But I think part of me was like, that's where I can exhale. Now, I didn't live there. I lived with my mom. But I went there every other weekend and for 3 months in the summer. So I had a little reprieve from the crazy. That, I think, was key. And part of it's just, I think, how you're psychologically made, you know? My mother is a very strong person. She's very strong-willed. She puts her mind to something and she does it. She's very gregarious. She's very resourceful. I am all of those things also. And I embrace those parts of her. But the parts that I reject are the kind of ill, sick parts where I go, I don't ever want to be the person that makes you feel bad about who you are. Because who you are, I want to see, and I want to celebrate. Because that did not happen for me, ever. Still to this day. So I think that that's what every human on this planet deserves, is to just be who they are and that be okay. And all the hate that happens from people that's so present in the world today, I think it's because they're not really people that are being who they really are. Because at the core of everybody is love, I think. Even my mother, you know, even her functioning through all this pain, this was caused by trauma. You know, when she was very young, she had a very, very traumatic experience, and it caused a break. So I don't even blame her for this now as an adult. But I do understand that it was very impactful on me as a human for her to have this condition. You know what I mean?
Yes, it rings very true, and I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
With what you just said.
Forgiveness is key with a person like this, in my opinion. Not forgetting. There are two different things. Because if you forget, then you just stay in this cycle of abuse with someone who has this type of personality disorder. But if you forget, then you go, oh, well, of course she really loves me. Of course she's back.
How do you fucking forget? Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can't really forget.
I was playing this game in my mind, like, oh, I'm going to go to Leanne's house. Oh, we could play this one-up game. I could throw out something that my mom did, and she could throw something out that her mom did, and it could probably just go on. I started picturing, like, yeah, did your mom ever point a knife at you and threaten your life? And then you could throw out something, and that's how I cope. because
How you cope is what? By one-upping?
no, not one-upping, by making it a tool to become stronger, to know
Right.
this is what happened. I've forgiven a long time ago.
Right.
I forgive each and every moment when something comes up in my heart. Before, like, I came in today, I had to go through the remembering that I forgave,
Right.
because I don't speak all of this out of hate. I know that it starts somewhere. I know that it's she has a past too. She had situations happen to her, and her mother had situations that happened to her, which caused her mother to probably do something to her. Who knows?
Yeah.
And I'm a much more disciplined person from having the life experiences that I have.
Same here.
And maybe it took me a lifetime, but I've become much more compassionate and understanding of so many different personality types that it's made me a better person.
I know if you find
guess.
the glass half full, I have a lot of glass half full with being raised this way. I am also very compassionate. I am one of the most patient humans on this planet. And I keep thinking, oh, I'm losing my patience. And everyone around me goes, I don't know how you are so patient. And it was because of this. I remember consciously thinking, I just have to wait. I just have to wait, and I have to wait till the summer. And when the summer comes and I go to my dad's, I can relax.
Oh.
And then, okay, I get through the summer, and I would start having... My dad, like I said, he lived about an hour away from my mom. So he would pick me up at 3 o'clock on Fridays from school. We'd drive home. We'd have a blast. Great weekend. I'd wake up Sunday morning with a headache and a stomach ache. Every Sunday I was at his house. I drank Pepto-Bismol every Sunday, and he would drive me home. And I'd have to lay down in the back seat all the way home because I'd be so sick. And now, as an adult, I go, it was all emotional. I didn't want to go back to her house. And so I would be so sick because I was anticipating what my next 2 weeks would be until I had to wait to get back to 3 o'clock on that Friday when my dad could pick me up again. So my whole life was about tick-tock. If I can just make it till Friday, I'm good. If I can just make it 2 Fridays from now, I'm good. If I can just make it to Memorial Day, hey, Mona, no. If I can just make it to Memorial Day, I'm good for the summer.
Sure.
So that kind of made me, Mona, a really patient person, someone who could measure things and say, all right, if I can take these 4 steps, I'll be okay. And like you said, to be more disciplined and very driven to just hone in and wait.
Yeah. Well, it's taken a long time for me to... I mean, I look back now and I go, oh, that's what happened to me. It happens all the time. Oh, that's why I was this way. Or...
Sorry, guys, the gardener is blowing right at this moment. I'm so sorry.
I always wanted to paint, and I always liked to write lyrics and write, music, but it was always tucked away.
Right.
Always tucked away. And my sister, being the other side of the spectrum of she wrote music, she had albums in Japan, she acts, and she still acts to this day. She does stand up, here and there. She does it all. She wrote a song years ago called Sophia, which is my name.
Aww.
And the lyrics are, Sophia, where do you hide your dreams?
Oh my God. Did you just
I'm
bawl?
not going to sing it because I'm starting to feel this surge inside of me because, yes, I did, because it's the truth.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't use that as a healing tool. It was just one of the many tools that I accumulated over the years to understand where I needed to find my strength, to be to live myself, to live my truth, and live and be okay, and give myself permission to be me.
Yeah. Just to be you, and to not be afraid to be seen. Yeah, there's a great Marianne Williamson quote about not shrinking. Do you know this quote? Such a great, I'll post on my website.
Okay.
It's such a great quote about your shrinking doesn't serve the world. You know, you need to be yourself, and that's what serves the world. And I really believe that. But the way we were raised, showing yourself was dangerous. It was really dangerous for me. You know, if I spoke up about anything I liked or who I was, I got told really quick why that was wrong. That's another piece of what I read here. Let me read something else here. This is just what the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders calls narcissism. It has the following characteristics: inflated sense of self-importance, fantasies of unlimited success, fame, power, beauty, and perfect love, or uncritical adoration. Exhibitionism, a need to be looked at and admired. A tendency to feel rage with little objective cause. A readiness to treat people with cool indifference as punishment for hurtful treatment, or as an indication of the fact that they have no current use for that person. A tendency towards severe feelings of inferiority, shame, and emptiness. A sense of entitlement accompanied by the tendency to exploit. A tendency to over-idealize or devalue people based largely on a narrow focus and inability to empathize. That is everything you described about your mother and taking on Zoo and making her a star and then making you feel less. That is all that you have said in that one diagnosis.
Yes. So as young teenagers, my mother decided it was time to go back to Japan, take my sister and I, and get my sister into a star career. And she took us. And even though my father still had visitation rights, she took us against the law. So I think that's called kidnapping. And
I think you're right. I think that is kidnapping. Yeah.
And we went to Japan. I remember just being checked out of school, and we got on a plane. I didn't even know this was happening. She had movers grab all our stuff, and of course we established a life in Japan. When we were on the plane, I said, "Oh, I can't wait to get back to America." My sister said, "Sophia, we're not going back."
What?
And my sister kind of knew what was happening.
And how old were you again?
Middle school. And so we went to Japan, and this relates to the quote that you just brought up about
not shrinking for the world.
The quote that you just
I just read about the
yes. And so she basically put my sister into music and modeling, and my sister's doing really well. She's talented, and she's a beautiful person, and it really worked well for my sister. And I always said, no, I don't want to do it. My mom tried to get me into it, like, why not? You can do this. And then as I grew older, I ended up getting scouted on the street.
Oh yeah,
by this big talent agency, wanted me to do radio and TV, and so I said, well, I'll do it if I can separate my mother from this. Right. Because I want to do this on my own. Right. I want this to be my thing. So I did do it. But then, of course, by law, you have to have your parents sign. You have to. And so I did do it. I kept her out of it as much as I could. But the more money I kept making, the more she got involved. And then, long story short, I was doing really well. And we got to the age where we liked boys. But my mom wasn't having any of that. Right. Because in her eyes, it was my possessions are, this is very borderline sociopathic. I don't want to get off the topic of narcissism, but there's some tendencies that there's some, I don't know how to diagnose people, but I definitely diagnose this.
My mother's sociopath.
This personality trait to sociopathic qualities. But, and so my sister and I had to make a pact to get her out of the situation because it was very abusive. My mom would do things that, Anyway, so my sister, we planned for my sister to go back to America, and I had to lie for 2 years, telling my mother I didn't know where she was, but she moved back
she
to
ran
LA.
Away?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And
that's intense, Sophia.
yeah, it was the hardest 2 years of my life.
I bet.
And then I followed suit. That was the plan. Because we consulted a psychic, and the psychic said, if your sister doesn't go first, you're never going to go. Because I was ready to go.
Right.
I was like, I'm out. I'm done with this bullshit.
Right.
I can't do this anymore.
How did she get back there? Did she just go buy a plane ticket?
How, my sister? Oh, I helped her get her stuff, and I said, you got to go. We bought a ticket. My mother would just basically tell me to get her money. Like I was making money. We were both making money from our agencies and our contracts. And all she cared about was that I took out a certain amount of money and gave it to her every month at the time. Until she realized how much money I was making, she decided she was gonna put it in a quote unquote savings account to protect it or invest it or whatever. And she put it under her name, and I couldn't touch it anymore after that because there's laws in Japan. You're not an adult until you're 20, I think, in Japan.
I don't know.
So, so she took our money, but it didn't matter to me. It's just money. It's just energy to me.
Yeah,
I wanted my life.
I understand, but that wasn't the point. She took your energy.
Yeah.
If money is energy and she took it, she took your energy.
Had she have not been that way, I would have stayed. I would have been okay. But anyway, so my sister came first. I corresponded with her through phone calls here and there at international, phone booths that you could call, and postcards. I used different addresses to get postcards, and it was torture because every night she would do the sleep deprivation torture of asking me and interrogating me about, I know your sister in America. I know what I know what she's doing. She left me with all this shit to clean up, and it was just like constant, day in and day out of that. And so I was never home. I just took off, and I just tell my mom, I got to work. I got to go to Osaka. I got to do this job.
Where would you go?
Camping.
You would go camping by yourself?
With friends. I'd make trips, as many trips as I could.
Let's go camping again.
Skiing, whatever I could figure out.
To get out. Yeah.
And then by 2 years, I left too, and I was done. I left with probably $2,000 in my pocket.
Wow.
And nothing else.
That's crazy.
And
she stayed there, your mother?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is she still in Japan?
Mm-hmm, she is. And
so did she never come back to America after that?
God, yes, she did.
She did?
So I went back to, I moved in with my sister, and she was living with her boyfriend. And my sister said, we really should tell Mom that we're okay. She's probably worried about, that guilt.
Forgetting. She forgets. She starts forgetting, and then you feel guilty. Yep.
And so we should really tell her what because I actually I sidetracked and I went to Thailand because I needed to find myself. I did a
soul
searching trip for 4 months in Thailand before I went to LA. I didn't want to come straight to LA. I really wanted to travel.
Right.
So I did that on very little money, and it was great. And then I came back to LA, and my sister said, "Yeah, we should tell our mom that, we're doing it." And I said, "Okay, fine." And I knew it was wrong.
Starts again, doesn't it? The fucking cycle starts again.
It did.
Yeah, it does, right? Every time you reconnect just a little bit, and it just starts all over again.
Yeah. Do you have that experience?
Oh, yeah.
I know that wasn't a no
totally.
question.
When I was 13, I moved in with my dad. My mom didn't talk to me for about a year and a half after that. And then she just showed up at my high school football game, dressed to the nines with a video camera because I was a cheerleader. And, at that time, everybody's like, wow, Judy Kemp's here with a video camera. Wow. So I was so young. I was a teenager. And I was like, okay. And then we had an okay relationship. I was a teenager, so I was not concerned about what my mom was doing. My mom was dating at that point. I think that was probably post her second husband, pre the third. She's on 6 now, but between second and third. So she was dating. She was always very sexually aggressive, kind of out there, very kind of open sexually like that. Like, she was always monogamous, but she was always like on the hunt for the next Mr. Right, who could have this unconditional love of her that was described in this diagnosis that I just read. Someone who just absolutely adores and thinks she's the most amazing thing ever. Of course, that doesn't exist, so she just divorces them as soon as they see behind the curtain and see that she's maybe not perfect, like every fucking body else on this planet.
Yeah.
So at 13, I start the cycle again, right? I am a wreck at 13, 14, 15. I'm drinking like crazy. I'm having sex with, I'm monogamous also, but I'm started having sex really young. I'm becoming like almost a pathological liar with my dad, some kind of weird control thing where I just start lying to lie and to prove that I'm no better, that I can get away with stuff. So I'm a wreck until I'm about everything crescendos when I'm about 20. My dad was in a long time relationship with a woman I still to this day adore, but they got married when I was about 18 or 17, and they got divorced when I was about 20. And my dad really fell apart with that. And at the same time, all my listeners have heard me talk about this. I was date raped in college. So all this drinking crescendoed with my dad's divorce. My dad moved into the dorm with me and started living in my dorm room. What? My dorm roommate moved in with her boyfriend so my dad could live with me for a little bit. And that happened right after I had this like date rape. So I felt I kind of fell apart. I started losing my hair and having some really bad stuff happen. And so I went back to my mom. I've got to get out of this town. I got to get out of the school. I love my dad, but at the time I needed to get away from my dad too, because it was more than I could handle. Okay. So I moved back in with my mom. Went to school in Georgia.
But okay, you forgot.
I forgot.
And then it was go back to mom. This is going to be
stayed
better.
Till 23. Big explosion at 23. Now she's on her fourth husband at 23.
Okay.
Is cheating on him and asking me to lie to her about it. And I'm like, I don't lie to anybody. And then I'm rejected and big explosion. Don't talk to her again at 23. You're dead to me. I don't ever want to see you again. She kicks me out on the streets. We're living in New York. Same thing as you. You ready? I moved to New York to study acting. And about 3 months later, she moves to New York to study acting. I have a modeling agency. Can I model at your model agency? She went to my acting teacher and asked if she could sign up for the same class. And my acting teacher sniffed it out and was like, no, and put her in a different class. But she was just trying to be this big famous person. I was trying to study. Like, ultimately I ended up a writer. So I was studying, right? My purpose in New York was to learn, and hers was, I don't know what.
And you were expanding yourself.
I was trying to find out who I was. And she just, I couldn't shake her, right? And so she starts fucking this other guy, cheating on her fourth husband, asking me to lie. I say no. Crescendos. She kicks me out because her husband is paying for the apartment that I'm staying in New York. So I'm out. Like 10 days, I have nowhere to live in New York. Finally find a place. Don't talk to her again until I'm probably 30. And then someone says to me, it's really a problem that you haven't reconciled with your mother. That's really negative. Right? Because nobody understands who we're talking about. No. So of course, if it's a normal person, then you go, okay, well, I don't want to have any hurt feelings with my mom. So then I go, okay, well, I'll try one more time to reconcile. I'll try again to reconcile with her. We have this another big explosion again at like 33, right when I find out I'm pregnant, and you're dead to me. I don't want to know you. I don't want to know your kids. And then I went, okay, I'm done. Now I'm done. These first two times, shame on you. This time, shame on me. If I go back into this, this is shame on me. Now, this is before I had read this book, Trapped in the Mirror. Before I understood that this is a cycle that cannot be broken if you are in a relationship with this person. You either agree to the cycle or you cannot have a connection. Those are your two choices, in my opinion. I don't believe you can have a half connection to someone who is this cyclically and predictably narcissistic. It is so textbook. Everything in this book was my mom to the letter. So if you come to the realization that that's who she is, you can't change another person, then you have to be okay with going into agreement with that person and who they are if you have a relationship with them. This is just how I function. And at 33, I did what you did. She wrote me, she broke up with me via email, right? The email was like, "You are the worst daughter. I hope that your kids treat you as bad as you've treated me your whole life. You are so disrespectful. I cannot believe you would behave this way."
Are we related? Wait a minute.
I know, right? It's the same. And then I never want to see you again. I don't want to know your children. I don't wish you well. I don't love you. Like all this. And I printed that email out because I said to myself,
Okay.
like you say, I bring up these memories sometimes to kind of go, I'm not going to forget this. I printed that out so I had proof in writing of how bad she was. So that if I ever went, maybe, I should try to reconcile.
Is it printed out on red paper on a flagpole?
Right, right. It was so bad. I printed it out and handed it to my sister-in-law, and she read it and just started crying. She was like, "What mother talks to their daughter this way?"
Yeah.
But that's my thing. I still have it in my file cabinet. So since I printed that, I have never, not 1 second, doubted my choice to have no relationship with her at all. That, for whatever reason, that last time was enough for me. And I went, I truly wish her well. Really wish her well. I hope she finds happiness, because she's really broken and she's not happy. She's really unhappy, and I don't want anybody to be unhappy. But of course, I don't need it to be in my life. I need my life to be mine and not in that cyclical drama that happens every time I go into agreement with who she is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the author goes into all of that and also how to sort of handle it if you do have to come into situations. And I found that the one thing that sticks with me, she says something like, you can't expect to receive the love that you can't expect to receive the type of love that
that you deserve, probably.
So you basically have to go into it knowing that you're not going to get the love that you expect.
You're not going to get anything.
Yeah, and so it's exhausting. It's exhausting,
exhausting
having to be in a certain space when you're around them. It's almost feels you can't exhale.
You can't exhale. You know, Bert has met her one time. I've talked about this before, but she kind of crashed a visit with her mom. I brought my kids to see her mom and Bert, and she just crashed it. Just kind of showed up and went, "Hi, I'm your nanny."
Okay, that's
and
what they do.
No one's ever seen her before, and my kids are like, "Who is that woman? I have no idea who she is." And Bert said, "What happened to you? I've never seen ever in my life." I shut totally down.
Sure.
I became completely void of any soul in that moment until I was out of her presence. I had no emotion. I was dead, totally dead.
I giggle because I've experienced that so much.
Right?
It feels like I feel okay right now. I feel like, happy to be discussing this because it's the only way to heal. It's the only way to work through it. And laughter is healing too. So you got to laugh about it all.
Yeah.
Makes for great stories.
Yeah. So we should tell some stories.
I mean, yeah.
What's some stories?
Oh boy.
Let's do your one up.
Oh my, so, dang, there's, I actually made some notes.
Oh, good.
Oh man.
I'll start with one.
Yes, please.
When I was a kid, my mom and I lived in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. And she would walk into the bathroom, get in the tub, and just start douching when I was on the toilet. Like just randomly just start douching in front of me, right next to me. And I go, that's really odd. Apparently a lot of people with this type of like narcissism are hyper like open sexually too, and that was something that was really bizarre as a kid, because I don't really need to see that or be involved in that at all. But she would do that a lot of the time.
Wow.
That's a quick story.
Yeah. I remember when I was younger in Japan and I was doing TV and radio on my own, sort of, that she would meet these very wealthy men that wanted to be in my company.
Oh.
And she always carried photos of my sister and I around with her. And I don't know where these men came from, but they seemed to always want to take me shopping for clothes. And my mom would say, no, so-and-so is great. He really wants to take you out and have lunch with you. And it just made no sense to me. But I did it because I had to comply with my mother's orders.
Yeah.
And later on, I realized this is weird.
Yeah.
Why are they taking me swimming at a nice hotel and then feeding me and then taking me to the Issey Miyake store to buy $1,000 dress? I didn't understand. I didn't get it.
Right.
But I was in a weird world regardless, living in Tokyo in the economic bubble times where people had money. And so I didn't question it much at the time. But later on, I remember getting a phone call, very strange phone call, of this person asking me that they're doing a survey. And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll take the survey, whatever. And they said, we want to know if you're a virgin. And my gut feeling, I really go with my intuition. My gut feeling is my mother is trying to find out if I'm a virgin, or somebody is trying to find out a virgin. Like she's auctioning off my virginity to some man. Like this is how twisted
That's crazy.
know it could be.
That's so crazy.
Because as a child, my mother would have photographers come, and if I'm correct, it was one of the photographer that took Brooke Shields' picture at 10 naked.
Yeah.
And he was looking at my sister's photos, and she was trying to get him to get photos of her nude so that she could, do
what Brooke
break
Shields
her.
did.
Brooke Shields. And so I didn't question it later when I realized that this is possibly what's happening. She's trying to lure my virginity around.
That's crazy.
To get stuff, because it was just her way to
get stuff.
To get stuff.
Just to get stuff.
I mean, that's also a sociopathic, I don't know, but I realized there were times when, why am I going on this skiing trip with these people? Fortunately, I never had any weird, rapey situations.
Right. Thank God, right?
Thank God, but it was...
She was making you a comfort woman.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's crazy.
Never looked at it like that. But yeah, it was in a really, really, probably a sick way to describe it, because there was no other purpose for me to be with this person.
Right. Other
than to make her happy.
Right. Or to get money, if she's getting money somehow from them. For like an escort, sort of, but not a sexual escort, like a date. Because I know they have, when I lived in New York, there were women that went on dates with men for money, but no sex involved. They just wanted to take a woman out to dinner and have you look nice. And someone told me about that when I was in New York, because I was modeling when I was petite modeling when I was in New York. And they were like, this is a quick way to make money. And I'm like, it's just a little too close to like real escort service for me. I can't do that. Thanks, but no thanks. Hard pass. But I wonder if it was something like that, because they would pay services for you to just go on a date. Yeah. And one day she said, you got to hang out with this person today. He wants to take you to he had a toy store. And I come home, I'm wearing a Tag Heuer watch because he wanted me to get a watch. And I'm just thinking, this is normal. This is people just give you stuff. This inappropriate behavior that you then as an adult go, that was actually inappropriate. Excuse me. Are you hungry? No, just... So let me ask you this. How do you think that being brought up like this affected how you approach parenting now? Because you have 2 daughters. Yes. So how do you think it affected how you parent? I knew from a very young age that I never wanted to do all the things that she did to me. I never wanted to talk shit about
their fathers ever, regardless of where the relationship went. I knew that it was disrespectful because I cried all the time. You had your cat to cry to. I cried to the wall in the bathroom all the time. It was maybe the onset of my depression because my mother always, she called our father Kusojiji, which means shitty man. Kusojiji. That was my dad's name. Oh, you're going to Kusojiji's this weekend.
You're kidding.
And it was just constant shit talk. But my dad wasn't a shitty man.
Right.
He was
a
my
good man.
dad.
Yeah.
And I wanted to love him. And I wasn't allowed to love him. And I had to hide my love.
Because it was a betrayal of her.
Correct.
Yeah, same here. My mother talked so much shit about my dad. And for me to show any affection to him was a massive betrayal of her in her eyes.
Yes, it was hurtful.
Yeah.
And so, I would go to my dad's on the weekends and spend, whatever situation. So deep down, I had this like already set in hate that I would have to fight with as I was there too, because it was always negative that she would say there was always this negative stuff that she would say. And as a child, you believe things.
Yeah.
Like, oh, is dad not paying child support enough? Or is dad like really this way? So I really had to really investigate for myself. Is he this way? And then if anything good happened, I wouldn't be able to talk about it. I would come home and she says, oh, where you go, blah blah blah, and it was just the interrogation again. And I would just be like, oh yeah, well, we just did this and that's it.
I downplayed my trip with my dad too, but I read this book by Brene Brown years ago called maybe Daring Greatly, maybe. And she talks about shame versus guilt, and how that affects your self-esteem if you feel shame or if you feel guilt. Because if you feel shame, you really feel like you are a bad person. If you feel guilty, you feel like a good person that has done something bad, which they're two different types of self-esteem. And I remember as a kid, my mother talking shit about my dad, going, you don't know what you're fucking talking about. I remember that as a kid, never, ever, ever doubting my dad's goodness, ever.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you would investigate for yourself. It made me just not believe a single word out of her mouth.
For some reason, deep down, that it's not normal.
I think,
just because
ethics are genetic to an extent. Morality is a genetic thing to an extent.
So even though I attracted a similar personality type as for my daughter's father, the first daughter, they have different fathers. I never, well, I can't say never because that's a lie. Never meant to speak ill. Right. Sometimes they came out.
Yeah, totally. Well, you're human.
And definitely not perfect. Far from that. And but I really made an effort to keep stories to myself when there were so many situations where it was easy. I could have shit talked and verbal diarrheaed that everywhere, all over the place on her. But she was a very sensitive kid. And I knew that, history was repeating itself.
Right.
As we tend to live out our, unfinished emotional situations in life and recreate them, somehow attract them like mosquitoes somehow.
Yeah.
And I went through that situation. As a parent, I learned a lot. I realized that you tend to get qualities from the parent regardless of knowing regardless of you just,
it's subconscious.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we did break up, and I knew early on that I had to separate I could not have any contact. So unfortunately, my older daughter, had to become the middle person. There was no way I could be in contact with that person and keep sane.
Okay, hold on. So first husband was also narcissistic?
Never married.
Oh, sorry. First.
Excuse me. It doesn't matter. It's the same. It's,
First daughter's dad.
Father, yes.
Was also narcissistic, would you think? Would you say?
There's qualities. I can't really.
Well, no, I'm not. I don't mean diagnosing, but I mean, were there. What attracted you to him that was similar to what you were saying we attract to us? You know what?
The negativity.
Oh.
It was familiar. It was constant negativity about other people and the insecurity and making everyone. And it was, I guess, later now that I see it, I was like, oh, but that negativity just became so, like, I could feel it like stabbing. I could feel the pain from it eventually, that it just got to be so bad. And the fact that they spend time to make your life miserable,
right,
because you're no longer their possession,
right,
and you know, all of that stuff just happened again,
right.
And so I had to separate myself as a parent and not call that person anymore. And it's so funny because with my mother, with my boyfriends, everyone on the outside world finds them so charming, and they do have good qualities.
Oh, everybody loves my mother. Love her.
And I always get how's your mom? You know, I get it.
Yeah.
She's a cool human being.
Yeah. Just not a good mom.
And just has personality traits that can destroy you.
Mm-hmm.
And that really creates a roller coaster ride of personal healing and personal, emotional trauma.
Absolutely. Because really you learn what love is from that relationship, that origin relationship, right? Your mom kind of teaches you what love is. Mm-hmm. I know that I had a writing partner, but before I met Bert, I was writing scripts with a writing partner, and she's exactly like my mother, carbon copy. And I kept going, why am I in a relationship with someone who is exactly like my mother? I cannot do anything right in this relationship, and I'm still showing up. Why am I doing this? So finally I got into therapy, and I'd been in therapy before, but it was about different issues. And I was like, clearly I'm choosing this relationship. I didn't choose my mother, but I'm choosing my mother in a partner for my writing, for what I hold dearest. And my therapist said to me, you chose her because that's what you think love is. That's what you've been shown love to be your whole life. So until you discover that love is something else, you'll keep doing that.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And she said, yeah. So you have to decide, actually, that's not what love is. But then that's really scary, because then you don't know what love is. So you have to make that up from scratch. You may be wrong. You may be incomplete. You may be completely right. But you're flying without a net. Whereas if you reconnect to this person you recognize, you at least know what you're getting. Not in the front of your psyche, but in the back of your psyche. Where you go, oh, I understand this. And this is what my mom showed me love is my whole life. So this is love. I married a very narcissistic person. My one and only marriage, Bert Kreischer, is very narcissistic in his tendencies. He is also very empathetic. He is very generous. He's really sweet. And he is a good partner. And he is really narcissistic in a lot of ways. Not personality disorder. But I ask sometimes when I get frustrated with him, because he's very much in what I call Bert mode, where nothing really exists outside of Bert at all. He ebbs and flows in and out of Bert mode, which gives him some redemption. If we lived in Bert mode all the time, I don't know if we could live here. But I always go to my therapist. He's in Bert mode. It's driving me crazy. Remind me again why I'm here. Remind me. And she said, if you choose a relationship like the one you have, that has no malice intended. He is so supportive of everything I do. He sees me for who I am, which are pieces my mother never gave me. So he loves me. I could screw up so badly and he would still love me. I really believe that. And I did never believe that from my mother. She was like, all these pieces are the healing pieces you need from your childhood. So you're in a place where you recognize this person, right? Okay, I understand how to function within this person, this narcissistic. I'm the giver, you're the taker. I understand how this works, right? But I'm also getting from him, which I never got from my mom. So she said that's where the healing comes in, is for you to be able to say, I need actually more of this from you, and for him to rise to the occasion and be able to give it, which he does. So then that makes this a healing relationship, because there are many times when he's super Bert mode that I go, I am a smart girl. Why am I put myself in the same position what I know is not love? Why am I doing that?
Yes.
And it's the other piece that I have to remember, that that's not all of who he is. It just triggers the fear in me that I have replicated my relationship with my mother, which I haven't, but it triggers that fear because there are shades of the same color, you know? Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
So my relationship with Bert has been the most healing relationship of my life. My dad gave me unconditional love and set me up to be in this place so that I could heal through my mom, which is really heartbreaking and sad now that I have children, to think that my mother felt the way that she did about me, and because I would never feel that way about my children. It's really heartbreaking for the little girl inside me that goes, that little girl, her mommy really did not know who she was and really did not love her as who she was. What she could see, she could not love. And that's so sad. And now Bert sees all parts of me and loves all parts. Does that make sense? And it's still something I can recognize and go, okay, I see this. I know that this is what love is. Somebody who's a little self-centered, a little too loud for the room, you know?
Wow. Wow. Like you just brought up your daughters, and I always wonder, like, how do my daughters perceive my mother when she was here the few times that they did see her, because I became completely different side of me came out. And I do, not too long ago, I think it was probably my mom's last trip that she came to LA. And when she was here, oh man, I would glance over at Kohana, and there was this look in Kohana's face that I never saw before. And I knew that she was just, she felt for me, like, deeply. And they're hypersensitive and aware. They learn from just watching. How I shifted in my mode, and then she's also hearing the conversations that I'm having with my sisters about it, because we'll spend 10 minutes with my mom. The rest of the day is venting about it.
Because a lot happens in that 10 minutes, right?
Oh, God, yeah. Like a whole lifetime of just stuff just comes back to you, and you're just like, holy God, okay, we need to like, decompress for like 15 hours now.
So now I have another question. How do you think your relationship with your mother affected your relationships with other women, or did it?
With other women, I probably was, like the book even points out, Trapped in the Mirror, that like I always felt like it was hard to show my love, like show affection, and because it didn't feel authentic growing up. Like there was always and then my mom was not an affectionate person. And when she was, there was always something that
was an agenda.
There was an agenda, or there was a trap waiting ahead. So I think I was probably a loner. I was never really lovey-dovey. And, when I see girls with lots of girlfriends and their tribe and hugging, and it just never felt natural to me.
Right.
So now I'm much more, I actually have to force myself to say, I'm going to give her a long hug today. Or, and as an adult now, I have to be more not skeptical of people's affection, or be more trusting, be more open, and yeah, I guess that's how it affected me. But I always had my sister as my rock, or we're each other's rock, and
that probably helped.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, where the reason I ask is I thought all women were evil. until I was probably, I'm not joking, about 29. I went on my senior trip for high school with 4 boys.
Okay.
And there was no sex happening. I was one of the boys.
Well, is that, do you think that's a reason? Maybe that's a reason.
What?
That I have more male friends.
Right.
Or it's easier growing up that, I mean.
Oh, I had boy friends, not boyfriends, boy friends. They were, I mean, I had girlfriends too, but they only got so far in my heart. The guys, I was the girl that all the guys talked to about their girlfriends, and I loved that role. I didn't want to sleep with all these guys. It was like when I walked into the pack of guys, I took a big exhale. I was like, I'm safe, I'm good now. And I don't know if it was, partly because when I stayed with my dad for 3 months in the summer, he's a guy. So we did, we went fishing with his brother, and I had a bunch of cousins that were boys, and I just was more comfortable. I'm a boy energy. I'm not a girly girl. I've never been a girly girl. But I literally thought women were pretty much evil until about 29. And I think part of that was because I learned who I was and could trust my own judgment with women and could read like cues from women and understand who is upfront and who is subversive and covert, because a lot of female, at least in the South, there's a lot of, oh honey, you look beautiful today, she looks like shit. I did not do well with that. That's why I couldn't live in the South a lot.
Well, I definitely learned that evil is a real thing. So when I watch Disney movies like the Tower one, the Rapunzel one, what is it, or Tangled, or when I watch superhero movies and I see like the villain, I think I don't like those movies as much because I realize that villain, that's a real personality.
Oh, yeah.
That exists. People with personality disorders, it's a real thing. It's a real human being. This is not a made-up personality type, the person that wants to destroy you or cause,
mass destruction.
This is real, and it just feels too intense for me to take. Like the Incredible
Hulk.
Funny,
you say that. I never thought of it that way. I hate those Avenger movies. I hate those superhero movies. They just went to see Infinity War, and I was like, I don't want to go. I don't like those movies. I wonder if that's why. Because I never thought of it like that. But I know what evil is too.
I can't take it. It's too much.
My mother divorced one of her husbands, and I was coming to see her, and I'll never forget, this gives me cold chills to this day. She was laughing and telling me how she broke in his house and destroyed every piece of furniture in his house. And the grand finale was that she turned over his great-grandmother's big, tall, like grandfather clock onto his glass dining room table and shattered both of them. And she thought, I fucking got him. And I was in high school when she told me this story. And I thought, that is one nasty person. I don't know what anybody would have to do for me to break into someone's house and destroy family heirlooms and be like, fuck you. That's so, and she's done other things that I don't feel I should talk about on air that are illegal, massively. Not that that's not massively illegal. But I felt like, I remember getting like the hair standing up on my neck, thinking, okay, I knew my mom to be not nice, but this is something entirely different.
Oh.
When you have that much malice for somebody, who would do that?
Well, there's a story that my mother would tell people when I was younger. When she was drunk, she would tell to people. She would this was her favorite story to tell her friends. When, so basically the house that we grew up in Cerritos was a house that my grandfather paid for and bought so that we could live. And,
your dad's dad?
No, my mother's father.
Oh, okay.
The Japanese one.
Okay.
And, at the time, my mother didn't want my father to be an LAPD officer anymore, so she sent him to law school. I really don't know how true the story is, but she repeated it enough times when she was drunk for me to believe.
She believes it's true.
Yes. So she sent him to law school, and one night he came like 1 a.m, he said, Keiko, I need you to sign these law papers, and I understand. My father's terrified of my mom. I was too. And so she's like, okay, he told her, I need you to sign its law papers from my law school. They were divorce papers. And they were basically, she found out through our next door neighbor, because my mom didn't understand English that well. She said, what is this paper that I signed? And my next door neighbor, Linda, said, Keiko, you just signed divorce papers and you just gave away the house.
Wow.
And you were left with nothing but the utensils. So she would tell people that she went into my dad's closet, got his gun, and invited him to a nearby sushi restaurant one day.
What?
Put the gun in her pocket and got to the table and said, and put it to his side, and he knew exactly what it was.
Oh my God.
And she said, John, I want you to change this. So she had all the paperwork ready or something for him to sign it back. And he was just shitting pants. She loved to describe how much he was terrified of her, and that she had him cornered, and she got the house back. And then, so he's signing, and he would say, and he told her, Keiko, can I go now? Are we done? She said, no, you make a check for money. So she made him give her money. And then he did that. And he says, can I go now? And she would shove it in his side. She says, no, let's go outside. We're going to go. You pay the bill. We're going to go outside. So she took him outside to the phone booth, and she says, take down your pants.
What?
And so she made him take down his pants in a phone booth, and she made him stand there while she called the cops and claimed rape. So she got him arrested. And I remember every time she tell a story, people would just laugh and thought this is the most hysterical story of revenge. There's nothing funny about that story. There's nothing funny about it. I never had never asked my father how true this is, because it's crazy. And that's how I know as a child, or how I understand, my mom saved us to keep the house, to be able to keep a roof over our head. And that made her a hero.
Her delusion of grandeur that they were talking about in this book. She has to be this grand person that's done this. And how
she got her ultimate revenge, and because she was screwed over by him. And so,
wow, that's terrible. What a terrible story. But that's what's funny about it. That was something to brag about for her.
Exactly.
And that was something, my mom destroying her second husband.
Yes.
Was something to brag about. Mm-hmm. Look what I got off on him. Mm-hmm. He thought he got the last word. Mm-hmm. I got the last word. Mm-hmm. It's such a sick way of being in this world. It's a really sick way.
Yeah. Well, she did tell me about a story where she saved his life. And that because he passed out in the shower, and he crashed his head through the glass, and he had glass all in his neck, and she lifted his head up. But the story that she would tell people was that, I wish I would have never
should have just left
him there. But as a child growing up, you become numb to the fact that this is a crazy person.
Well, and this is your mother. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is, you need her to survive until you're a certain age.
Exactly.
So you can't really connect to the evil until you're old enough that you can be safe if you connect to the evil. Mm-hmm. I talk about this too with my dad. I had my dad on such a pedestal, an impossible, unrealistic pedestal, because I needed someone to be okay. Mm-hmm. So if I had him to be okay, then I could survive her. Yeah. But then when I got to be a certain age, I had to look at him and say, how was it not okay? Because there were some ways where it was, he's a great dad, no abuse, nothing like that. Mm-hmm. But he's not perfect. No one's perfect. I lied to him for years, constantly. You're telling me really you didn't know I was lying to you half the time? Why wasn't that parented? And that's another form of abandonment for me, that I was pushing a boundary and you weren't holding a boundary. I was trying to get you to parent me. So having to figure out my stuff with it. I know that to survive evil, I had to have good, so I made good, even if good was only 80% good or 50% good or whatever it was. At the same time, I don't think you can really look at evil. I think back now and I go, my feelings about my mom were, I don't have anything to do with her. But the truth of the matter is, I did have fun with her sometimes. We would go get pizza every other Friday night. We'd go get pizza and go to the Fernbank Planetarium in Atlanta and look at the stars. She was very into astronomy and astrology.
Okay.
And that was something that I was into as well. And like I said before, I did get good things from her. It wasn't pure evil from sun up to sundown.
Of course.
But when you have, I think it's almost worse when you have these moments of oh, she understands that I like to look at the stars and she takes me there twice a month. And oh, okay, she's macrobiotic, but every other Friday I can have pizza. And oh, okay, this one time I'll never forget, I was in 4th grade. I wanted to have a birthday party at school because my birthday's in August. And, we went from Labor Day, which is September. So I never got to have my birthday party at school. And I just mentioned it to her once. And she surprised me and made this huge party with junk food. Like the biggest thing was that she brought Hawaiian punch. Like I was like, I think I'm going to pass out because you have brought Hawaiian punch. The only sugar I could have was orange juice. I couldn't have sugar in our house. We ate macrobiotic. She was Maharishi Mahishi Yogi.
Wow.
I couldn't do anything like that. So she showed up with like cupcakes and Chips Ahoy cookies and Hawaiian punch. And I was like,
what?
Best day ever. This is amazing. And it was a surprise party that she organized with my teacher, like this huge effort where you go, that's awesome. So I can't discount all those things, especially when you're a child. You hold on to those things so that you can make it through, right? All the times where she goes, steal this for me, because if you get caught stealing, you won't be put in jail. You go, but I don't want to steal. I'm ethically opposed. Too bad. Put it in your purse. Walk out the door. Just keep walking. Stuff like that. In what ways do you think you are similar to your mom? Anyways?
She is extremely creative person. She is definitely touched by fire. Like she can't stop going. Creativity is in her blood. She just doesn't have the business sense. Had she had the business sense, she probably would have been able to put her focus in other places other than planning everyone's demise. Right. Or whatever it was that she, sat there and did, staring at the wall or whatever she would do. And she's very, very creative. I definitely thank her for passing that along to me. And
any good parenting moments you remember?
Good parenting moments. Here's the thing. Being raised by a parent with these traits, I look at the good things, yes, but then I look, there's always that underlying reason why she was being good. Like, so when we had to go to court hearings for custody battles, she would get us all dressed up in these pretty, like, patent, shoes and velvet dresses, but it was because she wanted to show that she was a good parent. It was not necessarily because she wanted.
Right.
It wasn't real, but she did sew our clothes. Right. All, like, she dressed us up. She would put us in kimonos for the 4th of July, which in Japan you wear, kimonos when there's fireworks. And she carried on a lot of details. She liked details. So birthday parties that she would put on, it was always the details on the cake that she would make sure it was a certain,
best it could be.
Yeah, she had love in her life. She met a man that I truly look at as a person who was someone who raised me in a positive light, and he was with us for a short time when I was younger, and he really wanted to marry my mother, and he was always the example that I looked for in a man, like the qualities of a family man, and just he would school my mom, would say, Keiko, you kids can't eat by themselves, because she would make my sister and I eat at a table separately, and she would go eat on her own. But he came into our lives and said no, and he brought music into the house. He'd play piano. He introduced me to Led Zeppelin. But the fact that she brought in someone that like that made me see a good quality in her. Like, he enhanced her. Right. And I saw her laugh a lot. I'm like, wow, there's a person in that mother of mine that he unlocked. Right. And that was a beautiful time in my childhood. Right. And I really wanted Marco to just be with us forever. forever.
Aw.
You know,
what happened?
She didn't trust men. She didn't.
She ran him off.
She just, yeah, it was kind of like a starving musician, so to speak. Like he, you know, maybe she just had plans that she was going to leave America and she didn't want to bring him, or she just was done with relationships, or who knows what. But he was beautiful, and then their relationship was really beautiful.
Aww.
Like I really clearly remember all the laughter, and she had funny jokes. He just, you know what he did? He saved our childhood, and even if it was a short time of happiness, that was great, happy to last me forever. Even to this day, I remember him distracting my mother from all that,
right?
Like, you know, stuff. So he gave her love,
right?
And so knowing I could see that she had the capacity for it,
right? I understand what you mean. My mom had 2 relationships like that.
Yeah.
One, when after my dad divorced, her first relationship was a guy named Ron. And I rejected him with all of my soul because I was so connected to my dad that I couldn't, you know, at that young age, I couldn't understand having 2 dad figures that I could actually love, you know? So in hindsight, I was not the best kid to him. He was amazing to me. Amazing. And he was amazing to my mom. And my mom really wanted to marry him. And he was like, I'll stay with you till we're both dead, but I'm not getting married. And she, at some point, was like, I'm out. I need to be married, which is really stupid because I think if she had stayed with him, she would still be happy. He made her happy, and he, for whatever reason, she didn't do her shenanigans with him like she did with other men. Was it the same with Marco?
Yeah, I begged her to, we would just, he proposed to her so many times. We would listen with cups against the wall when they were in the jacuzzi. We're like, come on,
say yes.
Well,
if she had just stayed with Ron, I know that Ron started dating a woman after my mom that he's still with. I mean, they dated when I was 7, from like 40 years ago. So they would have still been together. And then her 4th husband, they were really happy. And then she just started cheating on him. And I think she was like self-destructive sort of, you know, where you will marry me, Ron, or I'm leaving. So that's kind of a form of self-destruction, instead of saying marriage really is just a piece of paper. I mean, Bert and I were married way before we got married. You know what I mean? It's just a ceremony. So have a ceremony that you call something else and don't sign the paper. Who cares? You know, really what matters is that you're happy with this person. And if for whatever reason this is a deal breaker for him, you know, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, well, happy wasn't good enough for my mother. I think the tendencies to have a possession and see that there was no use to her.
Right.
She didn't see what I saw.
Right.
That was beautiful about it.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And in the moment, she just, what are the pros and cons? No, let's go out.
And they look at people in their lives as hosts. You know, that person is a host. That was in this book also, is that they will attach to that person until that person they have no more use for that person. Their usefulness is gone, and they let go.
Sure.
So I don't know. It's really sad. I feel like my mom's trajectory through her adulthood has been so different than mine. Hers has not been in search of healing or self-awareness. It's been in search of superficial fulfillments that don't last, you know, marrying a rich man, staying looking young, chasing, you know, she was a really successful model my whole childhood, chasing that instead of saying, you know, there's a time for everything, and there's a time you can model your whole life, but there are periods of time where there's no market for what you have, and you have to do something else for a little bit and come back. And you know, a lot of rock bands are that way. Guns N' Roses were hot, and then we didn't see them for 20 years, and now they're back, and they're touring every year. I think stuff like modeling is similar. You know, when you get in your 60s, you work all the time. But when you're 45, there's no work for you. So she just never really sought, like... I always thought when I was really off in a ditch, when I was drinking too much, and after the date rape and all that stuff... my goal was to be happy. So my number one goal was just to be happy. And what does that mean? Really, what do I need to do to be right with myself to be happy? What do I need to do for a living to be happy? What do I need to accept or forgive to be happy? What book do I need to read so that I can learn something to be happy? Because if you're happy, it permeates through everything, through your relationship with your children, your relationship with your friends. That was my goal. And I don't think it was ever my mother's goal. My mother's goal was to rule, to own, to possess, and to lord over something.
Yeah. That's why color block is happiness.
What'd you say?
There was a time when I had to block her. I had to block, and that's very recent, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because I needed to not have that negativity in my life. I mean, they say that, I don't know if it's sociopaths or both narcissists and sociopaths, that in the end of their lifetime, they tend to end up alone because they've driven away so many people.
Right. Well, yeah.
And they end up alone. And it's almost becoming true. Like she is alone in Japan, and I think the one way she lures people into her lives is she still carries around photos of us, and she brings people and says, "Oh, my daughter's actress in America. You know, my daughter has, you know, these are her grandkids, and she used to have a radio show. Whatever it is, she brags." And so, not too long ago, she called and said, "I need video of your sister, of recent work that she's done." And my sister, she just put together a reel, boobs hanging out in one scene, and my mom called and said, "I can't believe you send a picture, you know, you for the, what is that?" You know, there was not something that she could use.
Right.
And it just every single time. So I'm just like, you know what? I need to take a break.
Yeah.
And she did. She always do the thing of divide and conquer us too, like separate my sister and I, and that's just not going to happen.
Right.
And you know, so for me to be happy, I, like the book says, sometimes you have to separate. And that's just a thing that I had to do.
Right.
I just,
same here.
It's hard. It is hard. It's a hard thing because without the strength of my mother to keep us together, the strength of my mother to say, no, I'm gonna keep you in this school and to keep custody of you, you know, not let your dad take you, because I didn't want to live with him only because his second wife was just like my mom, and I, you know.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So in a different way. You know, he's going through his patterns too.
Right, sure.
Just like how I picked somebody that, even though I thought I was rebelling, and picking this guy that was like totally, I thought was opposite, I just was going through the whole situation over again.
Right.
But yeah, you gotta, yeah, you're asking like, what does it mean to be happy? I'm trying to.
Well, what did you have a moment? Because I had a moment. Okay, this is going to sound really cheesy.
What?
really cheesy.
Go for it.
But I was probably 20-ish. And at this point, all that negative stuff with my dad's divorce and the incident in college and the heavy drinking. I was drinking so heavily, I was losing my hair.
Okay.
And my liver was like enlarged. I was really drinking a lot.
Wow.
I lived an hour from college, right? Or my dad's house was an hour from college. So I was driving from my dad's house back to Georgia State, back to college. And I was listening to the Eagles. And Desperado came on the radio.
Okay.
And I, for whatever reason, heard the lyrics to that song in a different way than ever have before or since. Because, you know, he says, you know, why don't you come to your senses? You've been out riding fences too long now. So, you know, you're a hard one. You need to let somebody love you. That song, I just went, that's it. I got to figure out a way to let somebody love me, because I don't let anybody love me. And that's why I'm trying to kill myself by drinking. I used to drive. I used to race. I used to drag race cars.
No way. Okay.
I did. I used to drag race. I used to drive way too fast. I used to try to get my car over 100 miles an hour. And I think I was
my
really
dream job.
Secretly, is it? I dated a drag racer in college, like a real one. I saw Kenny Bernstein run 300 in Gainesville. It was awesome. Anyway, I used to drag race just for fun, and I used to drive really fast home, like way over 100 miles an hour. And I used to say to myself, if I just jerk the wheel really quick, I'll be dead. Maybe I'll just do that. And this will all be over. All this pain and the drinking and I just needed to be over.
Sure.
But I was always thought, my luck, I'll do that and I'll live. And then I'll have to survive through the recovery.
Oh,
so I had just been thinking about jerking the wheel when that song came on. And when that song came on, I went, that's it. I need to figure my shit out. I need to figure out how to let somebody love me.
Oh, thank you, Don Henley.
I know, right?
Oh my God.
The cheesiest song ever. I know. I was like, why couldn't it be like some awesome, like Tori Amos, like Deep Thought, Nirvana? No, it was a song from the 70s. And that song, I just went, all right, that's it. I need to figure this shit out. So I went on a quest of trying to figure myself out. It didn't start that day, obviously, but my mind shift started that day for like, I've got to figure this out. And then I had also I went to a Halloween party and there were psychics, and I went in the psychic reading and I walked in the door and the psychic went, whoa, you have big issues with your mother. And I went, yeah, I do. She said, you also have terrible headaches. I said, yeah, I do. And she goes, I think I know somebody who can help you with that. Here's his number. He is a Reiki master and a massage therapist. So I think you should go see him. So I made an appointment because I had terrible headaches, really bad headaches. And so I went to see Scott. I walked in the door and he did the same thing. He went, whoa, you got really big problems with your mother. And I went, yeah, I do. And he said, this is when my change really started. He said, I can help you with that. But if you get on this path with me, you can't go back. So you be ready, because once this starts changing, it changes everything, and you can't go back. And I can't tell you what's on this path, but it's not going to be what you know now. And I went, let's freaking do it.
That's very good.
I can't live this way anymore. And that's how my healing started, with a psychic.
Wow.
The start of the actual healing. The mindset started with Desperado. The mind shift.
Wow.
But then I went, okay. And then that's when I started going, what do I really want? And what I really wanted was happiness. And then what does that really mean? That means being financially secure, not rich, just like know that I can take care of myself financially. It means I have a relationship I'm learning from and fulfilled. It means I'm doing something I love as a job. What does that mean? You know?
So when you wanted to jerk the car,
yeah,
do you think it was depression? Do you think there was because I have a very similar situation when I didn't know what depression was.
No, me neither.
And I remember I was depressed. Later I realized I was depressed, and I would walk outside and go, I would have thoughts of jumping in front of a car. Yeah. But I didn't do it because I had a baby.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And then just like that psychic told you, there's help for that, or what was the term? I was walking through the park, and there was a gentleman that I would see all the time walking his dog. The dog was the godfather of the park. And he's like, how are you? And I looked at him. I said, I don't know. And he said, you know, there's help for that. He looked at me straight in the eye and he goes, you know, there's medication for that. And that was the start of my healing journey. Wow. I ended up getting admitted to another hospital and blah, 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 blah. That's a whole nother podcast. But
I'd love to have another podcast about that if you're open.
Psychiatric wards and all that whole
oh my gosh
time period of life, in and out of that. But yeah, there's different paths that you end up on that just make you handle life so much better and turn it around and make great things happen, bring happiness, and give a better life to your children and
yourself.
And yourself.
Because you realize, you know, the thing they've been telling you your whole life is that you should not exist. What I read in this book resonated with me very much. Your existence is incorrect. That you exist It's incorrect. And growing up Southern Baptist, that's a whole nother thing where, that you were conceived in sin, therefore you should repent all the days of your life, which basically says you were born of sin. So you are sin all the time. And you can never really have redemption until you die. And Jesus died for your sins, and repent, right? So when that is what you grow up in, you really feel like your very existence is incorrect. It's wrong. And to be able to find a path out of that for me was really powerful. To say, no, I actually deserve to exist, and I deserve to be happy, not just to exist. And Bert and I talk about this all the time. He says I have a Lowland Scott mentality, right? If there's something I can recycle and make into something else, I will do it. We can afford to go buy a brand new whatever that is, but I go, no, we just have to keep it all cheap and like save our money, and you never know. And he finally goes, you deserve nice things. You deserve not to shop at Target for everything you wear. That's okay. But I still struggle with feeling that truth, that it is okay that I go to Bloomingdale's and buy myself a new outfit. I have never done that ever, because that is not something I do. I don't know. Your self-worth is so tied to me in this narcissistic relationship with your mother that it's something you have to work on your whole life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And talking about it is great. I'm glad you introduced me to the book, because I let my sister listen to it.
Oh, you did?
And she, she's going through a lot as well, healing, and she's done everything you can think, whether it's taking channeling classes, taking anything to give you some sort of relief. But this book is very powerful.
It is,
because it's not just, you don't even have to have a narcissistic parent to have these tendencies,
right? You
can still have an experience in your childhood one time that makes you go, my feelings are invalid, or like it's like if a parent, like in the book talks about, if a parent says, no, you really love grandma so-and-so, you really care about them, you're being denied your real feelings.
Right, exactly.
And that just takes you onto this
whole nother path of self-doubt.
Exactly.
Could be a coach.
Yes.
It could be a coach. It could be a teacher. It could be a friend's parent. It could be anybody. You're right about that. You don't have to have a parent to understand what's going on in this book. You could have had one serious experience with one person, even just in a moment, that makes you have these feelings. It's really, really great. Well, so thank you for coming and talking to me about it.
Thank you for letting me talk about it.
Thank you.
Because it's always good to share things that maybe might make someone realize that they too have something that was just as crazy, and will realize that it's okay.
Exactly. And like what your friend said in the park, there's a path out. There's help for that.
Yes.
It may not be drugs help for everything, but there's help for that. Drugs, I have no problem with drugs for help, but some of it, maybe therapy, maybe group therapy, maybe addiction counseling.
Absolutely.
There's help for everything. That's the key. Is that I think a lot of people feel like, no one else feels like they feel.
Sure.
And that's not true. Because after reading this book, I went, wow, there are lots of people who experienced what I experienced. Not in the specificity, but in some pretty specific ways that is not specific to my life. And there's a path out. So if there's a path out for that, there's a path out for everything. You have to, though, it's hard to do without help. It's hard to do without help, I think.
Very true.
You have to do the work yourself. But I would never begin to teach myself piano. I would get a piano teacher. Why would you ever begin to try and heal yourself out of some of these? What are you laughing at?
Because I did that. I started.
You taught yourself piano? Okay, bad analogy. Sorry.
You can learn anything on YouTube, actually.
Oh, well, then maybe you should start therapy on YouTube. Surely there's a therapist on YouTube.
It is my therapy.
Anyway.
Yeah, music is therapy.
Music is therapy. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk. Thank you. I'm so glad.
This was fun.
It was. We'll have to do it again. Psych wards.
Yes. Psychiatric medications and the path to treatment is powerful too.
It is.
Yes.
All right. Thanks everybody for
Thank
listening.
you.